this little modifier screw off. This is a thing that you only get. Like if you see guys doing reviews and they've only had it a day or two, they're not going to catch a lot of stuff. What's up, everybody? We're going to do a quick initial impressions of the 257. Now, I took this out to the range, kind of snuck it in with my Vulcan 25-yard review. So I kind of compared this against the Vulcan. Spoiler alert, there is no comparison. The Vulcan mopped it up at 55 yards. But I'm going to show you some of the groups, and this is just plain right out of the box. It's a big bore, even though it's 25 cal, it's 257. But it shoots substantially more power, and it's just a different look. So before we get into the shooting, I'm going to kind of break this down for you. This is an extremely long rifle. It's the Texan 257 LSS, which is a long version, probably 53, 55 inches, roughly 8 pounds. Yeah, it's hard unless you take off the sound moderator right back here. To fit it into a case, and most of the time I have to take this, unscrew this last top piece to get it in the case, and there's kind of an issue with that. But yeah, this again is like a mini big bore. There's, I think it's 175 to 200 foot-pounds of energy, shooting roughly 65 grain slugs all the way up to about 120, usually in the range of like 72 grains to about 85 grains. Again, probably around 960 feet per second. The recoil on the rifle is not really that, I mean, it's not huge by any means. It's a mini big bore. There's just a different feeling when you start going up to this range of caliber and power, along with anything. When you're pushing close to 200 foot-pounds plus, you do feel a substantial kick. So the build quality on this rifle is pretty much the same as a regular Condor. It's just like beefier. Everything is heavier and has a lot more reinforcement. You know, the cocking mechanisms just that much more tight. Yeah, so, you know, from a build standpoint, it's very simplistic. You have your air tank back here. There's minimal parts. What parts that are on here, if something goes wrong, it's going to be fairly affordable to replace. And I kind of, you know, it's a utility gun. It's nothing, it looks kind of cool if you're into this kind of look of a gun, but most people kind of look for a little bit more stylish or conservative type rifle when they're out there. But one of the things I could honestly say, Condors, Texans are kind of your truck gun, where you can beat the heck out of them, get them muddy, dirty, and you don't really feel all that bad about it because it just takes the abuse. All right, let's go ahead and swing out to the range. I'll show you some of the groups, some of the shots that are going on, and we'll kind of talk about it here in a little bit. There's one. All right, let's talk groups and accuracies from the range. A lot of my 5-shot groups were close to a quarter. A lot of them were 4 within a quarter, the 5th one hanging out. And I know that this doesn't seem like overly, you know, awesome, these groups, but for a big bore or a mini bore, it actually is pretty good. I've had the Benjamin Bulldog, which didn't even come close to this kind of grouping. A lot of my big bores just don't do that well. They're kind of like 50 and 100-yard rifles. This is actually pretty accurate on the bench for not cleaning the barrel, not sizing any of the slugs, doing any fire lapping, doing any of it. It's just straight out, probably within a quarter, slightly larger than a quarter most of my shots are at. So that's obviously accurate enough to like take out a squirrel at 55 yards, but it's not really made for that kind of small, I should say small animals, you know, pesting, that kind of stuff. You can, but I guess this gives me a little bit of hope to all the things I can do with this. I can kind of modify the rifle, put on a stock, clean out the barrel, polish it, maybe do some fire lapping, get the right reg pressure. I pretty much just turned it at 2500 and started shooting it. I didn't really even play with the pressure. And then the slugs, finding out which best slugs. I used Griffin's 72 grain, 76 grain S seemed to be the most accurate. Those were probably going, I'm going to say probably 960 to 980. They were hauling in that. So that's pretty good. Overall, pretty happy with the accuracy out of the box, even though it doesn't compete against, you know, the Vulcan 3 or my Day States. The real benefit of this, guys, is if you can get some tight groups like this and this, and then start whittling it down. It's a quarter and you maybe get it down to a nickel. With the BC, the ballistic coefficient you can get from these slugs at 70 and 80 grains of, let's say, a 0.25, 0.34 BC, it is substantially different than shooting, you know, a 30 grain slug, even a 60 grain slug out of the 30 cal with a BC of 0.11. It's night and day as far as when you start getting out there further. Oh yeah, and with any kind of wind. So that's the benefit, you know, to me right now, the way it's shooting in decent wind conditions, I think you could probably take out a rabbit at good 100, 125 yards just with a little bit of experience with it not shooting all that great, because I think the round's going to hold in there with the wind. I think it's going to be playable, or you're able to predict the amount of wind drift that you're going to have a little bit more successful. Some of this other stuff that we see guys shooting 150, 200 yards, and you look at their pellets and their BC and you're like, dude, if you're off like 1 or 2 miles an hour, your pellet's going to go six inches to the left or right, or that really crappy slug they're using. It makes me think, like, how many times did you take that shot and then you just showed the impact of the one that you got lucky on? This little modifier screw off, this is a thing that you only get. Like, if you see guys doing reviews and they've only had it a day or two, they're not going to catch a lot of stuff. But the modifier has a very thin thread that you can cross thread or strip out. And I don't like the fact that I have to kind of unscrew the modifier every time I put the rifle in my case. You see where this is going, right? You're going to wear out the thread on this. This rifle is not regulated. I have an external regulator on it, but out of the box, you're going to get probably 5 to 10 shots depending on your expectations. Now, if you're really picky and you're doing target shooting, you probably want to do 5 shots or adjust your elevation. That being said, out in the field, you could probably get away with 10 full shots. Again, you'd have to adjust your elevation and kind of figure out how far you actually want to shoot this thing. So the trigger's actually pretty good. It's 2-stage. I don't really have that many issues with the Condor triggers. They just seem to work fairly adequately. And yeah, it's the same thing as the Condors, maybe a little bit tighter, a little bit heavier pull. But other than that, it's pretty adequate. Most of the guys on Airgun Nation and the forums say that the largest thing, if you want to go long distance, use a 257 and a really good slug and do some modifications to the Air Force Texan 257, and it should treat you pretty well. Some of the weaknesses of this rifle is it's a single shot. There is no regulator, like I mentioned. It's heavy, it's extremely long, its construction is maybe a little outdated. You basically can only shoot slugs out of this rifle. Now, it's a 257. You could probably put 25 caliber pellets in it, but it's not something that's really made for, and it's probably going to overjuice those pellets anyway. So kind of why bother? The other downside I know is this is extremely hold sensitive. You're going to hear some things about Air Force Texans and Condors is frame flex, and that's kind of how you push down on the bottle, or you're kind of doing that, and it does affect the point of impact with these rifles. And there's a couple different ways how you hold it, how tight you hold it, or how loose you hold it, and where you position the weight in the bench, all affected the point of aim while I was shooting this rifle. So it's not simple. And to further compound the complexities, the fact that this is a single loader, meaning you have to kind of get rid of your grip that you have, put in a slug, and then kind of reacquire the same exact grip with the same pressure in the same places, makes it a challenge. There's just another way around saying it. It's definitely a challenge. Now, there's some enhancements with frames and stocks that will kind of alleviate this issue. All right, guys, this video has been way too long. 257 impressions and where we're going forward. Overall, I think it's a fairly decent rifle. It seems powerful, somewhat accurate, cost effective. It shoots flat, shoots fast. There's all these questions. But to me, everybody talks about the accuracy of 257 long distance. So this is one of those things. Is it truly something, is one of the best long distance rifles for maybe prairie dogs at 200 or 300 yards? We know it has the power, but does it have the accuracy? And are there better options? Now we have the Vulcans and the Day-State shooting Ultros at 0.21 BC coefficients, or maybe even higher. You know, ballistic friendly slugs are always coming out. And then you have the 457 Texan and the 308 Texan, which we have at our disposal as well. So there's a lot of testing that needs to be done that I kind of want to look forward in doing. And yeah, and in addition to that, the companies know that these slugs with the high BC sell. They know that criteria sells. So are they fudging those numbers just to kind of push their product? That's where, you know, looking forward to the future, we get a lab radar. We measure the BC side by side for each rifle down at 50 and 100 yards to see if it really is delivering on the promises and kind of get a 1-to-1 ratio. Ideally, if the Vulcan performs very, very kind of close to what a 257 Texan does, then hey, you know, that you can kind of push that pain away and just kind of go with the 30 cal or 25 cal out of a regular small bore. But that's where we're going. If you guys like this stuff, hit that like, subscribe, and I'll see you later.